Call the Kitty Hawk Town Council order Monday, May the 6th, 2013, Kitty Hawk Town Hall at 6 p.m. Want to welcome everybody out tonight. Thank you for coming. And ask you to join us in a moment of silence and Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Next is approval of the agenda. We have any changes to the agenda?
I don't.
Motion for approval?
So
Motion
moved.
to approve.
A second.
Okay, any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Next is public comment. Is anyone signed up for public comment, Lynn?
Yes, sir. Paul Barr.
Good evening, Town Council. I just wanted to voice my opposition to possible taxation that would include only those living near the beach. I feel like the whole town, the entire area benefits when tourism becomes a part of the town, and it is right now. And I think that the town should share in any cost of the beach replenishment, and not just those that are living closest to the beach.
Okay,
That's my comment.
thank you. Okay,
Tyler Tonneson and Ethan Tack.
Hi, I'm Tyler Tonneson. And this is Ethan Tack, and we are students from First Flight High School. And we are doing a civics project in our class where we have to create a proposal for one of the local communities here and then present it to you guys and just try to get approval for it. And our proposal is for bike racks at the beach accesses because a lot of the local beach accesses around here do not have bike racks. And especially over the summer with all the tourists that are coming and all the traffic we have, bikes are a big option for transportation that a lot of tourists use to go to the beach, especially when they're close. And a lot of times they don't have anywhere to put their bike racks. And I've seen in the summer, you know, like 6 bike racks tied around one pole, and that doesn't look good, and it also that's not very safe for the people who put them there. And so we have looked into it, and we're trying to get donations from Ace Hardware, Home Depot, or anyone for wood to make the bike racks, and then involve our school by having our drafting class draft them and our construction class build them, and then our art class to design them. And the only thing we really need approval is to actually put them there, and if our school can't get the donation for the wood, then it would be to supply the appropriations for the wood, and he's going to go into the detail about that.
If we do not use wood, there are other options. Metal bike racks can go from anywhere to $203 to $390. That depends on the size of the bike rack. And whether it's single-sided or double-sided. Recycled plastic is another popular option. It's environmentally friendly, and those are a little bit more expensive. They range anywhere from $340 to about $550. So, yeah.
Yeah, that's all.
okay, Emily, you want to address?
Yeah, as a matter of fact, I would like to tell these gentlemen that they picked a pretty good project because bike racks are at all of the beach accesses is one of the recreation plan, which we are going to be accepting tonight, one of the recreation plan's priorities. And in the past, we have had bike racks at some of the beach accesses, not all of them. I think we probably Willie could tell us what happened to some of them, but yeah, I wish you you know, good luck with your project, and just want you to know that it is consistent with what we have in our recreation plan.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Lynn?
That's all that have signed up.
Anyone else wish to speak at the public comment at this time? Okay. Next is consent agenda.
Motion to approve the consent agenda as promulgated.
Second?
Okay, any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay. Item 6, items removed from consent agenda. We didn't have any of those. So we go to item 7, public hearings. And do we have a motion to go into public hearing?
So moved.
Second?
Joe, you want to take up A, text amendment?
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mayor Perry, members of council, members of the public here this evening. The item before the council tonight for first item is a public hearing regarding a proposed text amendment that was submitted by a local business applicant. Specifically, the proposal would amend subsection 42-577, Table 4 and Table 5, and that is part of the town's sign regulations. And the intent of the proposal would be to increase the number of allowed open-close signs, neon open-close signs, from 1 to 2, and would also allow the maximum size able to be used for that purpose from 2 square feet to a total of 4 square feet. And just to clarify the intent of that, the applicant's intent, it would be if someone wanted to, if this change is adopted, a business could put 1 4-square-foot sign or 2 2-square-foot signs or some other combination, as long as it doesn't exceed a total of 4 square feet. So just to be clear on the intent of that. I have had some comment related to that, and if the proposed ordinance needs to be changed slightly to maybe better state that, we'd certainly be open to that. Again, this was proposed. You may recall a few months ago, a local businessman came before you with this thought, and the council instructed staff to work with the planning board to consider an ordinance proposal. At their meeting on March the 14th, the planning board voted 3-2 to recommend approval of this proposal to the council. And I'd certainly be glad to answer any questions that the council members have at this point in time.
Okay. Any questions? Okay, thank you, Joe. Do we have anybody signed up to speak to this portion of the public hearing, Lee?
Yes, David Hunt.
Good evening, thank you for having me back again. I think everybody except for Ms. Klutz was familiar with what I was talking about before. Right now, as the ordinance is written, you're allowed 1 sign this size, regardless of the size of the building and regardless of where your building is located. Like Barefoot Bernie's recently had one on the north side for the traffic coming in on the south side, and that was found to be in violation, so they were forced to take one down. We're not trying to make it look like Times Square or Las Vegas and everything. Actually, Saturday I went around to the businesses to try to garner some support for this, and I was surprised at how many businesses have no open signs. I don't think that adding 1 or 2 more open signs to some of the businesses that would benefit from it is going to be detrimental to the small town look of Kitty Hawk or the intimate feel of Kitty Hawk. And I'd be happy to answer any questions if you have any.
How would you post 2 of those at the strip mall that you work in?
Well, what we would do, we would probably just go with a little bit larger sign, a single sign, a little bit larger. Yeah. Any other questions? Thank you very much for your time.
Anybody else sign up, Lynn?
No, sir.
Does anybody else wish to speak to this portion of the public hearing? Come on up, give your name.
Hi, how you doing? Chris Flahos of Barefoot Bernie's that he mentioned. There, we had two of the open signs for about 7 years before anybody actually said anything to us. And we have noticed that now that we've removed one of the signs, obviously traffic coming from the north isn't really able to kind of know if we're open because it's facing obviously the south. So we have noticed people asking whether we're open at certain times because we do open a little bit earlier than some of the other restaurants. So just speaking of someone that did have two signs in their building for quite some time, we have noticed a little bit of difference and it didn't seem to affect anyone at the time. So if that's just what I've seen so far. So if you have any questions, I'd be more than happy to help you. But I like the ordinance.
Okay.
Thanks.
Anybody else? Okay, let the record show that no one else came forward. And motion to close this portion of the public hearing.
Do we discuss now or afterwards?
We can discuss afterwards.
Okay, because sometimes we're supposed to discuss it with,
Yeah,
If you have questions.
we need to close this portion so we can go to the conditional use, which the attorney's gonna do,
okay.
and swear the people in.
Well, I think what Emily's saying, can you have your discussion on this one before you go to a decision on this one? And you can discuss it, then close the public portion, because you may have a question for Joe or something, and you won't be able to do that once you've closed it.
Well, then I would prefer to do it now, because
Okay.
I would like to comment to Joe that I think the wording changed to make it a little bit clearer that you can do one larger sign or two smaller if the council decides to pass this would be better. Just because it occurred to me, I thought, well, I think I know, but it could be one or two. And if we can, and can I just discuss what I think in terms of land use plan, adherence, et cetera, at this point?
You certainly can have your discussion before you go to the
Before we,
vote.
okay. I noticed that, first of all, I would just like to say that this seems like a very small thing to do in terms of a benefit for our businesses to be able to show on, to communicate to the public that they are open. I don't think that it would have a bad effect on the community, community appearance. And I would also like to say that another one of our goals, or another one of our land use plan policy is to do what is necessary to support our businesses in the community. And so I would see that it was consistent with the land use plan goals and objectives.
Okay. Anybody else want any discussion? Okay, then I guess we can close this portion of the public hearing and move on to the next one, is that correct?
Or you can go ahead and vote on this one if you're ready to vote on it.
I don't know that
During
we're
the public
ready to
hearing?
vote on to.
During the public hearing?
No, you're closing the public
Closing,
hearing
okay.
as to the sign issue.
All right, and so that we could vote on it
If
after
you're ready to
closing.
vote on that one, you can vote on that one.
Once
And
we
then we'll go
close
to
the
the next
hearing.
public hearing on the.
But we
conditional use.
can not vote on to it now and take it up later.
Well, no, you can finish this one right now.
Okay.
About the sign.
Okay.
You can go ahead and you can vote on that one if you're ready to vote on it. And then we'll go into the public hearing on the conditional use permit.
Okay, or we can not take any action onto it now and take it up after the other one's over.
You can.
Okay. Is that what you prefer to do, or you prefer to vote now?
You're the one doing all the talking.
Yep.
I don't understand where you're going. I'm ready to vote on the thing,
Yeah,
but
me too.
that's neither here nor there. Do it the way you want to do it. You're in charge.
I'm in charge. I don't make any difference. What do you want to do?
If you're ready to vote, I would rather you vote on that one, and so we got that one out of the way, and then we'll go to conditional
Okay.
use hearing, which may take longer.
Okay, do we have it? We have
Motion to
any
go
more?
out of public hearing.
Second.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Now, we can take up,
What are we voting on, having it
We're,
we have to have a motion
to,
to accept the proposal, or not to accept it, or change
we're
it.
voting on the change to the ordinance?
That's
Yes.
correct.
Okay, I vote no.
well,
We
can we
got
make
to
a
have
motion
we got to have a
first?
motion. We have to have a motion and vote on the motion.
Okay, I'll make
Okay.
the, I'll make the
I'm gonna make the
motion.
motion, then.
I make a motion to adopt the proposed text amendment allowing up to 2 neon open signs totaling no more than 4 square feet, with a clarification in the wording of the ordinance to allow, to confirm that this is something that can be done using 1 larger sign or 2 smaller signs. And I find the amendment to be consistent with the town's CAMA land use plan in that it supports our small businesses and in the public interest by allowing a relatively minor change that helps local business better communicate with potential customers.
Second.
Okay? Any more discussion on it?
Let me tell you, I thought about this long and hard. I also read the land use plan, and I talked to a couple of the board members on the planning board. I have no issue with having I do have an issue having an increased sign, and the reason why is because if everyone had an extra sign in their property, it would be neon lights galore everywhere. That's the issue I have with it. I mean, I have a business. One of them has an open sign, and it's the same size as the sign you brought there. The other one doesn't. I don't know if it draws more business or not to me. It's there because we got it in the wintertime because it's dark at that in the evening, and we want to make sure everybody knew we're open. The sign serves its purpose. If I had 2 signs there, would it make more visibility to know I'm open or closed? I don't know. The concern I have, though, and I'm probably going to vote against this, and the concern I have is the fact that if every business has 2 signs, it's going to look like, not being mean against Virginia Beach, but Virginia Beach, or a large municipality that has a lot of neon stuff. It's bad enough when you ride down and you see a sign in Currituck, these neon LED signs blinking at you, then I don't want that in Kitty Hawk. So anyway, I'm gonna vote against it.
Okay, the neon sign port is what we've, as a town of Kitty Hawk, has tried to keep at a minimum. Try to keep that so we don't look like Virginia Beach or other places. I don't understand why the open sign is not enough. I don't have a problem with 1 sign, but 2, I can't really vote for 2. So,
All right, well,
all those in favor of...
wait a minute, hold on just a minute. I was just gonna vote for it, but I think maybe I better tell you that I'm along with Emily. I think we need to help our businesses. The man had 2 signs. It made a difference because people come in north or south. And I think at some point, Kitty Hawk's got to wake up to the fact that we're in a modern world. There is a need for lit signs, lighted signs, and we're going to have to come to grips with that. I don't have a problem with this, so I'm going to vote for it, and I'm a little bit surprised at the resistance to it. I don't think it hurts anything. I think it does help things. I think it should benefit businesses wherever possible, and I think in today's world, we need to help them as much as we can. So that's my input onto it.
The 2 signs, if you were on a position where you had to see it for the signs that we have now, I wouldn't have a problem with. I have the problem with a larger sign, or if you're just a business on a strip mall, one sign, open sign's enough. But if you have a corner position where you can't see coming from both ways, I can see the point in having the two open signs. So as it's written, I don't like it. Do I support the businesses? Yes. I'm not sure what open signs really does to create business for the people. I don't know.
Well, you know, my comment on that is that, particularly in the wintertime, it's nice to know if a business is
I
open.
understand, yeah.
And I do pay attention to that sign. But I guess my question would be, why would anybody put up two signs right close to each other, which would be what's objectionable? The gentleman that had two signs had them on two different aspects of the building. One larger sign for a building that is set back from the road quite a bit might be helpful to a business that is in that position. I can't see business people making a decision to put two small signs on their business when one would, you know, actually do the trick if they're on a strip mall. I don't think they're out there trying to figure out ways to make the town look gaudy. I'm just, all I'm getting at is that I think this gives them a little bit more flexibility, and that most business people would be inclined to do what's smart for their business.
I would probably be flexible to change, in my opinion, if it was just one sign that was a larger sign, but having the two signs, like I said, if this gentleman's the mall he's in, if everybody has two signs in a building, think how that would look.
But why
I mean,
would
you
they-
have, how many
why would
places
they
are in your
do it? I
business?
guess
How many
that's-
businesses are there? 6, 8?
6,
Okay.
7.
So you'd have 12 neon signs clear across the front. That's what I was thinking about when I made my decision. If,
But Ms. Klutz is saying that we would have no reason to do that. We may have a slightly larger sign.
I understand, but when you're making a decision, we gotta kind of make it for everybody, not that what you would possibly do. I mean, I'm trying to be as flexible as possible. If somebody come up with something to change my mind, I'll change, you know, because I want to be as user-friendly to the business as possible. Believe me, I know how tough it is.
When I was out Saturday, let the other business owners know about the hearing tonight, I would say that probably 50% of the businesses in Kitty Hawk have no open sign at all now. I don't think you're gonna see a huge influx of open signs, you know, next week if you approve this thing. Just gonna give business owners that have a need for two signs or someone's a slightly larger sign can be seen. This has a very small sign to be seen, you know, at 50 miles an hour going down the bypass, you know,
Right.
300 yards away.
Joe, do we know what some other towns have done?
No, I don't have that information. I could certainly be provided, but I'd have to research that.
Well, I think you folks need to stop being a little bit backward here as far as trying to help your businesses. Let's vote on this thing one way or the other.
Okay.
Can we postpone it until next month and let Joe find out what the towns are doing and let me think about it?
I don't care what the other towns are doing. I want to help these people. And this is a minor.
If you want to help them, then let's go and postpone it till next month and let me think about it some more.
Well, I guess I would have to ask, I remember when I was working for the military, what they always used to say was, don't tell me how to do something, just tell me what it is. But if it would help Irvin and perhaps the mayor to think about it again, could the wording be such that, you know, you do some sort of limitation on the number of signs based on opposing walls or something
Right.
of that nature? I would prefer to leave it the way it is and give the businesses some credit for not doing something that is unattractive, and in the case of most businesses, unnecessary. If they're just a business in a strip mall, one open sign is plenty, and they'd probably maybe choose a bigger one, and rather than two little ones that maybe people couldn't read. But if it would help to get it approved, why don't we see if there's some way to word it that would be acceptable to the two of
If you could
you?
have one sign on in the strip mall where there's just, you're looking straight on, if you could have one sign
One sign per business.
per business.
And
And then if you were on a corner to where, possibly you could want to know, that's a possibility of doing it that way, but not two in the building.
okay, so what the objection is two signs, on the same wall, one business. Is there a way to just word it so that you prohibit that? It's getting more down into the weeds than I would prefer, but I would prefer to get something that would accommodate the business owner who had two signs and had to take one down and nobody cared. And Barefoot Birdie's been around a long time. I have never found their signs unattractive. So I think most people would agree that it's a nice-looking business, and it's just, I'd just like to see something done to help out with this. Can we do that?
Does she have to withdraw her motion?
You have to withdraw your second, she has to withdraw a motion.
Yeah, what y'all are talking about would be a substantial change. You'd have to redo it all again
Yes,
anyway.
and have another public hearing and all of that.
Yeah.
Yeah. But
You get
if
the
that's the
gist-
only way we can get it.
You get the gist of what we're talking about?
Yeah.
I do, Mayor, and as the town attorney, Steve Michael, just mentioned, as far as going back through the process, it would be a case where if the council would like to have another hearing on this next month, that would be an action that you would have to, if you would consider taking that tonight to set that hearing, that would be something we can do. If you would prefer to see it before you see another proposal before you set the hearing, then you'd be looking at 2 months down the road.
Do we have to have another public hearing on it? We do,
To change it
to change it.
the way they want it.
Well, wait,
Yeah.
listen, guys, I ain't gonna fight about it. I mean, I want to do what the right thing for the businesses also. It's not that big of a deal. The point that I'm trying to make, and I want everybody else to understand this, if you have 7 businesses and they're stuck together and you got 14 open signs, it's not gonna look good, flat. I'll vote for it because I agree that the businesses need to be supported and helped in this situation. But I don't want to see 14 signs on 7 buildings. That's about as simple as I can get. Okay.
Okay, so you want to,
So
Well,
you
I
just
guess
want
we
to
still
vote
have-
on it? Do we?
We still have the
Do we have-
motion and the second, so let's vote on it.
so you don't want to send it back, you just,
Are you changing your mind
I'll
on
change
this?
my mind. I'll just vote for it.
Okay, all right.
We
Let's
wanna
vote for it then.
okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
No?
No.
No,
All right.
okay.
You got it. I didn't see that coming.
Okay, next we need to go into public hearing for conditional use permit.
Oh, I meant to.
Ready? All right, ladies and gentlemen, the next matter is a public hearing on conditional use permit by request by Dominion North Carolina Power for a wind energy demonstration at 5300 Woods Road. This is a quasi-judicial proceeding, so the information that is presented, if you're going to speak tonight, you will need to be sworn. It will be under oath. And with that said, Joe, you will need to be sworn, and who from Dominion Power plans to speak tonight? If you gentlemen would come up and be sworn also.
Steve?
Yes.
I met with the applicants. Do I need to be sworn?
You do not need to be sworn. You will just need to put on the record what you did and what you observed.
Okay, and when do I do that?
Once we've started the hearing.
Okay.
All right, if all of you would come up and be sworn. All right, Mr. Hurd, if you would introduce this to us.
Thank you, Mr. Michael, Mayor Perry, and council. What I'd like to do is use, the applicants in this case were good enough to provide a nice visual here. It's an aerial photograph of the property in question, and then they've overlaid that with information about the location of the various improvements proposed by this project. So I would like, I just felt this was the best reference we had, and it seemed clearer to people if you're able to point out, because it does show the existing buildings and some of the surrounding area as well. What you have before you tonight is a proposal requesting approval of a conditional use permit to establish 4 wind turbines as part of an electric public utility research project on the Dominion, North Carolina property at 5300 The Woods Road. The reason this is before you is this project is because of the inclusion of the 4 wind turbines. So that is a conditional use. The other aspects of the project would be things that would be allowed as a use of right that wouldn't require approval by the council. The proposal, and I'll use the arrow here, includes a 70-foot high tower located up in this area, more toward the northern, just north of the one entrance to the property, of the northern entrance. And then the other 3 red dots down here are 3 other turbines, approximately 40 feet, 46 feet, and 40 feet in height. So again, heights, you have a larger tower, a little more by itself over here in this area, and 3 of them, 40, 46, and 40 down just south of the existing building, the administrative building there. In addition to those improvements, the project will include an area that you see in blue here, this box, is the approximate location of a ground-mounted array of solar panels that would also be part of this alternative energy project. And one thing you'll note is that all of these improvements would be visible from the public area. There is a fence that comes across right in this area, kind of in line with the front of the building here, coming along this area. So they would all be visible from the public area, but not accessible. They are all behind the existing security fence that Dominion Power has at this site. The energy generated by this project would be used internally by Dominion as part of this. This wouldn't be energy going back on the grid. The other aspect of the project is this yellow box here. That's the location. This is an existing little island at the end of the parking area, just to the south of the parking area in front of the building. And that area contains a kiosk, and that kiosk would contain information about this project, as well as real-time updates on the amount of energy being generated by each wind turbine and the solar array. So it would really provide some public information about these different forms of alternative energy. And that's the intent of the project. Just to give you a little bit of context, just quickly run through this for you. The property itself is zoned commercially. You also have some adjoining commercial property to the north here, where you have auto repair business and a cabinet making shop. You have a larger area over here, part of the Kitty Hawk Woods Coastal Reserve. You have some area across the street here to the east that is zoned residentially, and you do have one, it's kind of just off of this photo, right in there where the arrow is. There is one residence back in there. But then you have some other residential property located across Grenville Lane down in this area here. So the center of this right-of-way is where the zoning line is, where the commercial zoning ends and the residential zoning begins. You do have some residential area there. And another feature you're probably familiar with is in this area right in here, I'm pointing to, you do have a public park that is operated in that location. In reviewing the project, the staff in looking at this has provided the council with a list of the different criteria, the different zonings and development standards. And I just wanted to give a brief summary of those without going into a lot of detail. But for the record, wanted to cover all of those, and I'd certainly be glad to answer any questions or provide more detail on any one of these points. Just in looking at the property as a whole, the types of issues we look at, lot coverage. This property is allowed total coverage of 60% for a commercial district. The project itself really doesn't change the lot coverage in any significant way. You do have a small area for the base of the larger tower. That would be a grassed area that would be converted to a small base. And the little area here where the kiosk is would also be converted. So you're talking very, very minor changes in the large scheme of things. And as a whole, the property would still easily, it would have a little greater than 50% coverage, so still easily complies with that standard. As far as the height of the proposed towers, the council had recently adopted an ordinance related to the electric public utility research projects and related to the height of wind turbines that allows up to 70 feet in height. All of the proposed turbines would comply with that standard. Our ordinance related to small wind energy facilities does have limits, a variety of different types of setback requirements for turbines, regarding setbacks from property lines, from buildings on adjoining properties, from adjacent roadways. The proposed project would comply with all of those. Looking at access to the property, the proposed project would not change any of the access or impact it at all as far as that goes. Looking at parking required, just looking at what's existing on the site and what would be required, there is one thing to note, particularly with the addition of the solar array in this area. The project would result in a net loss of 8 parking spaces in that area. And then there would be 3 spaces that Dominion Power has proposed to dedicate related to the kiosk outside the fence. That would be dedicated for people from the public who would come and maybe want to view the information on the kiosk and view the turbines and solar array. Even with all that in place, the property, as you can see, very large property. Lots of parking in the front already, as well as opportunity for parking throughout the site. Just looking at the marked spaces existing, it still easily complies with the parking requirements based on the number of employees and use of that property. There are no changes proposed to the lighting of the site or to the signage on the site. There may be some minor signage associated with the kiosk, but it would be more of an informational type of sign associated with that, but no changes proposed to that. So the only issue that was identified in looking at this and at the existing site and the town standards has to do with buffers. Now, majority of the property is, you have a pretty significant buffer of wooded areas around the edges of the property, a pretty significant distance. But the one thing I did want to point out here is that along the very southern side of the property, along Grenville Lane, in this area, you do have a paved area that extends, and again, we haven't had access to a survey, so I don't know how close it actually extends, but just in looking at it, certainly appears that it may extend within the 50-foot buffer requirement from a residential district if we're looking at the middle of Grenville Lane as where that residential district starts. That is an existing situation. The proposed project would not change that, would not increase the nonconformity. But I did want to point that out for the record. Did want to note for those of you who have not been out to the site, there is an 8-foot high wooden fence that appears to be on the Dominion property that does serve as a visual buffer. There is also, as you can see in here, there are some trees located in this area between the Dominion property and the residential property in this stretch beyond the park. It's not clear, though, whether that is on Dominion's property or whether those are within the public right-of-way of that road. So I don't know that it is something that Dominion controls or whether that's in the public right-of-way. Just to point out, there is about 120-foot distance from the actual residence over here across Grenville Lane. So if we're looking at the buffer and how that would potentially impact the residential use across the way. That's good. So those are the things we looked at as part of this. You also have in your staff report potential findings regarding the conditional use permit standards that the council has to look at. And just wanted to point out that its meeting at March 14th, the planning board did review this application and voted unanimously to recommend approval of the proposed conditional use permit. There are a variety of conditions that the board recommended. I did want to make one comment regarding the final condition that the board had. The way that it was stated in the record was in case of a buffer zone complaint about provable glare, a buffer zone will be considered. And the intent of that came up in the discussion of the solar panels and whether there would possibly be some glare. The panels are generally oriented to the south. They are ground mounted, so these are not, up high in the air. And nobody could, really state with anything definitive at the planning board meeting about whether or not any glare would be generated from these. But the board did want to put in that caveat. After having a discussion with the town attorney, it is our thought that if the council does wish to include something, a condition regarding that particular issue or additional buffer requirements, that's probably better put in just in terms of defining what you would like that buffer to be rather than leaving it open-ended like that. So that was the only other comment that I had as staff, and again, certainly be glad to answer any questions the council members have.
Questions?
I have a question, Joe. The residential property that borders Grenville Lane, does that go all the way? I know the house is set back. Is that a single lot going all the way to the Woods Road?
No. You have, there are two lots located across Grenville Lane. You have this property that does go all the way to that, but there is another property behind it as well.
Okay,
that
behind
is
it,
undeveloped.
but not in front. That's a single lot that the house that you can see the rooftop on.
The Calvino property goes to the Woods Road.
Goes to the Woods Road. So right now, the part that does not have any kind of buffer that could be on the right-of-way, the part that is right now used by the playground, which makes me think that is right-of-way because it's a town playground.
The playground itself is not within the right-of-way. That is it's a separate property.
It's a separate property
Yeah.
owned by the town.
Yeah,
I see.
yeah. So the
But
right-of-way is separate from that.
Right now, the house that is across on Grenville Lane does have buffer from the trees that are across the street from that house.
Yeah, and again, I think this picture shows it, well, kind of where the location of those trees right now, as well as the fence that extends in that area. And you can see the location of the houses
house,
here
right.
in proximity to the buildings and proposed improvements over here. But there is no buffer along where the park is.
Exactly, okay.
The playground was donated by NC Power, or most of it
Oh,
was.
okay. So it was the
I
property.
think part of it was the right-of-way along Grenville Lane, but the rest of it was donated by NC Power. I do know that.
So, in my way of looking at this, it appears that if there's any glare at all, it would wind up on the playground because of all the trees that seem to be across the street from that house.
Where the parking is, I think, is where the right-of-way stops. And that's the part, was the town part, and they donated the other
They donated
northern
the other,
part
I
to make it
see.
a park.
Okay.
And I will point out that there's a wooden fence there, and there, on the other side of the wooden fence, between the parking lot and the fence, there's also a mound of dirt that's probably about, 5-6 foot high at least? It's like a,
It sits up, yeah, where the fence is located, this area here where these trees are does sit up fairly high as
High.
well in that area. But yeah, on the property itself, Dominion has some materials and equipment in that area as well.
So as of right now, the residential property that would be most affected, the improvement on that residential lot is back near the fenced area with the trees on the other side of the fence, across the street.
Yes.
Is that-
The wooden fence is setting on a hill. And in addition to the height of the fence, you can add another 4 to 5 feet of height from the playground,
Right.
which is at the same level as the road, which means the fellow that you're seeing in the house is a little bit lower than that. So there's just very little chance that any glare, if that's what you're worried about, is going to hit below, because
That-
it's going to be angled up to catch the sun. It's just not going to happen.
Well, I had a question, but maybe the applicant could answer it. Is the direction, which way are the solar panels tilted? Are they tilted to the west to pick up the sun during the latter part of the day, or are they going to be tilted toward the east?
The question came up at the planning board meeting, and the applicants can certainly talk to this as well, but the answer given there was that they're generally actually oriented toward the south. So as far as the angle goes, it would be facing generally toward the south.
Okay, okay.
Any other questions for Joe? All right, for the applicant, if you would come up and identify yourself.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, Town Council, Mr. Counselor, Mr. Town Manager, Ms. Clerk, and Joe Hurd. My name is Michael Thompson with Dominion North Carolina Power. My business address is 5300 D Woods Road, Kitty Hawk, North Carolina 27949. I'm the Manager of State and Local Affairs and Chief Lobbyist for Raleigh, North Carolina, and I am a resident of Southern Shores. It gives me great pleasure to come to you once again. I would like to introduce the other two members of my team who will be speaking on the technical aspects of it and answering further questions. We have Mr. Edmund Hall, and on his left is Andy Flavin. I would like to say before turning it over to them that as the Chief Lobbyist for Dominion, I have a responsibility in letting you know about some actions being taken or not taken in Raleigh. There's a House Bill 298 and a complementary Senate Bill 365 that are going between different committees assigned by the rules chairs. These two bills would affect Senate Bill 3, which was passed August 1st of 2007. Now, the effect it would have could be all or in part a repeal of that particular piece of legislation and could possibly have an impact. Ask me what I think the opportunities are would be pure speculation, and I'm sure you've probably read a few articles on that. So unless you have any questions, I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Flavin.
When do I have to make myself?
Good evening. My name is Andy Flavin. I'm with Dominion out of Richmond. My business address is 120 Tredegar Street, Richmond, Virginia, 23219. Just wanted to, if it would be okay with the town council, to just very briefly go through just a few of what I think are some important slides, just to, certainly in case there are any further questions that you might have, but also to make sure that our public audience here has a chance to see some of these slides so they get the appropriate context for what we're actually proposing. Excuse me. This is what, again, for the benefit of everyone, what we're proposing is 4 wind turbines, 4 micro wind turbines, 1 horizontal axis turbine that would look, similar to the turbines you see up and down, like at the Outer Banks Brewing Station, and Jeanette's Pier, and then 3 vertical axis turbines, which are different in that they spin like an egg beater almost. They actually kind of look like egg beaters. We're also proposing to install a lithium-ion battery that would be used to store energy generated by the renewable assets. Also solar photovoltaics has been discussed, about 6 kilowatts. Ground mounted. So that's kind of the general scope of this. And this project would be operated, would essentially create a microgrid at our, the Woods Road facility. And a microgrid is essentially, it really is a miniature electricity grid. It takes and it combines loads. Like the building loads that we have there, and it takes distributed energy resources like distributed generation, both renewable and non-renewable, and energy storage applications within an electrically defined boundary that would allow this microgrid to operate in parallel with the regular utility service that everyone would get, and would also allow it to island itself during an outage and continue to function kind of as a self-contained entity. So that's one thing that we're really interested in pursuing from a research perspective is, we see a lot of value in being able to assess whether it would be technically feasible to use the renewable resources that are available here in Kitty Hawk, such as, stronger than average winds and, of course, the sunshine to create a technically functioning microgrid that, again, could operate on a day-to-day basis, but it also could serve and operate during an outage. We see some potential value in that in terms of a catastrophic storm, some of which have been seen here, certainly in the past few years, where you have access, say, to like Hatteras Island, which is restricted, and you can't get diesel in there to run diesel generators. Is it technically feasible to use renewable resources to provide some source of energy? And we hope to be able to make it work at our own facility, and if so, maybe there would be an application to a public safety complex or an emergency shelter. There are also kind of some other subtext to the research we want to do. The 4 turbines we'll be looking at, they're obviously all different designs. Different heights, but they're all applicable to residential installations. In fact, 3 of the 4 of them actually have mounting kits that you can actually mount them to a residential rooftop. That's not particularly what we're advocating at this point, but that kind of gives you the scope of the size we're looking at. And again, we see value in that. We have agreed annually to submit reports to the North Carolina Utilities Commission and to the town as well, which will kind of go over some of our research findings, and also, that would allow folks who may be interested in installing turbines of their own to kind of get some just very objective information about how are they performing in Kitty Hawk. And so these are pictures of the 4 different wind turbines we're talking about. Again, 3 of the 4 are about 45 feet or less, which, if you want to get some perspective, is probably the size of the average utility pole or light pole you might see outside here in the parking lot. This 4th one, which is the 5 kilowatt one, the second from the left, that one would be a little bit taller, 70 feet tall. And I just want to point out that those heights, those include the tower height plus the blades to the highest point. That's not the tower height plus, and then you add so many feet for the blade. That is the total height from ground to the highest point. Again, to give perspective, the wind turbine at the Outer Banks Brewing Station, or Outer Banks Brewery, that is an 80-foot tower, and then you have to add on another probably 10 or 11 feet to account for the radius of one of the blades. So again, in perspective, these would be demonstrably smaller. This is an example, and we put some hard copies of this just to give folks a height comparison of what we're trying to do here. I know that there's concern of, a lot of people hear about wind turbines, and they're the 500, 550 foot tall turbines you might see on top of a mountain, or maybe at some point in the future off the coast. But this gives you an example here of what we're really looking at. They are very modest in size. And another question we hear a lot about is the noise. These turbines, again, partially because they are so small, have very moderate noise output. They range anywhere from probably about 35 to 55 decibels, and that's measured at wind speeds of nearly 30 miles per hour, which is pretty significant. These are generally measured within about 40 feet or so, 40 or 50 feet of the base of the turbine. So again, the wind would have to be going very fast to produce even this type of noise that I'm showing here. But when you compare it to other types of noises, you can see it's very modest as well. And that's partially what the setbacks in the Small Wind Energy Ordinance are designed to protect against. It's not just you think about the turbine falling over, but that also creates a noise buffer to the extent noise is a consideration. And obviously that's our site that Joe has already gone through. And those are our tax boundaries. So it's just the property boundaries. So at this point, I'd certainly ask if the council has any questions, and I'd be happy to answer them.
I got one. So I guess with the setbacks, what you're telling me that the people that are outside those setbacks will not hear these turbines?
I think I don't want to say they will never hear them because there's some noise to some degree, but when you look at the comparisons of so based on this this chart I've got up here, if we had wind speeds nearly 30 miles per hour, which is pretty significant, these turbines, most of these turbines would be in the realm of a quiet library or softer than a quiet library, or a whisper type deal. But yes, given the additional length that these homes are removed from the turbines, when they were just talking about the buffer and so forth, I can't commit to say that there would never be any noise heard, but I think it would be very unlikely that these would create any, turbines this small would create any type of disturbance in that regard.
I have a couple of questions. This is a research project. How long do you think you will have the towers there for the project to get the kind of information you want? Any idea? 5 years, 10 years, whatever?
So what we've proposed is the actual research component of this, where we would submit annual reports. That would last 3 years, that demonstration period. Our vision and our hope is that the turbines would continue to operate past that. Generally, turbines of this size are given a rated life, assuming proper maintenance and so forth, of around 20 years or so. So our intention would be continue to have these operating, continue to have the information available to the public to look at it. But our demonstration period and kind of the official reporting part of it would be a 3-year period.
I guess this is kind of, I don't know, maybe the attorney needs to address this, but would it be a good idea to have them report back to the council? Maybe not even just part of the conditional use, but in a year or two when you get some information and research, it would be helpful that you could come back to the council and make a presentation and say, this is what we found out and this is how we feel some of this stuff will be applied or could be applied, either in Kitty Hawk or within your company even,
Right.
you know. It seemed like that would be a good idea, but.
Yeah, I mean, we certainly would be happy to do that.
Okay.
Absolutely.
I do, and when am I supposed to make my statement about meeting with Andy Flavin on?
All right, were there any other questions for Mr. Flavin? at
Well,
this point?
I do have one, a couple,
All right,
about the.
If you want to go ahead and make your statement about what you did and then ask him your question.
Okay. On Friday, whatever the date was on Friday, I met with Andy Flavin at the project site, and we walked the ground, and he explained where all of the various components of the project would be. He talked to me about where the wiring would disturb the site, and we did speak only of the technical aspects of the project and some comments on the educational aspect of the project. We did not discuss anything related to the conditional use permit in particular. Is that's
sufficient.
what was necessary? When we talked a little bit about the educational aspect of the project, there were some kiosks that were going to be at the site, at the Dominion Power site, and then you were talking about a site at Town Hall, Kitty Hawk Town Hall, and one at Kitty Hawk Elementary School. And I just feel like an elementary school kiosk would probably be a little bit advanced for elementary school students, and would like to recommend to Dominion that perhaps the educational component could be at a middle school or even a high school, so that it's not, little children could come on a little field trip over and look at the windmills, and I think that probably would be good, and some discussion of it. But at the high school or middle school, they could do a little more with comparative analysis of alternative fuels, reliability costs, that kind of thing, how it fits into the grid in terms of the use of fossil fuels in conjunction with alternative fuels, so that they have a little bit more of an understanding of the power generation in general and what it really takes for them to be able to charge their iPads and all of the things that they like to do when they're home. So, and maybe a little bit about what your parents will be paying in their electric bill for different types of energy. So I would recommend that the kiosk at the elementary school perhaps could be more useful at a higher grade level.
Very good.
Any other questions?
I'm sorry, I just wanted to address one more question that came up before. We're talking about the solar panels, and the question first about the orientation is they'd probably be generally southwest, because yes, south delivers more kind of total energy over the course of a year. Southwest, we probably would lose a little bit of the total energy over the course of the year, but it would produce more energy during the peak times of the day, which would be from a broad scale economic perspective, that's a little more valuable to everyone. So, but also as part of that too, solar panels, these solar PV panels that we're talking about, they are not designed to be reflective. They are designed to absorb. And while I can't say that there will never be any glare or anything off of them, that generally is probably lower than one might think. There are types of solar generation technologies that do reflect sunlight onto, say water to heat it up as steam. That's called concentrating solar, and they use parabolic mirrors. So there is a type of solar that does reflect the sunlight onto certain points, but these solar panels really, they're trying to take the sunlight and absorb it, and using it to, solar panels are typically made with silicon, the light that's absorbed essentially excites these silicon electrons that are in the panel, and that's what creates electrical current. So again, I cannot say there will never be any glare, but generally that's solar panels that have an excessive amount of glare probably are not doing their job very well.
On the solar panels, these are fixed, non-moving. They're in a static position
Yes, sir.
and at an angle, something maybe like this to catch the sun's rays.
Yes, sir.
So if from a southwest direction, the vegetation is going to be blocking any potential for that. Certainly, it won't be directed towards the park area that everybody here seems to have fixated onto. Next question, the wind turbines. The pine trees around here running between 80, 90 feet high. And you're well back off the beach, well back away from any wind. Your chances for those 45 footers to do much is not going to be very much.
And, you know, that's certainly a fair point, and, you know, something that we considered, and, you know, if it were up to me and I totally got my way, kind of the energy geek in me would love to see something where we could put turbines out on a pier like Jeanette's Pier. I mean, that's a pretty advantageous place to put them. However, given the, you know, certainly the logistics of that, you know, we had to, you know, realize we couldn't do something quite like that. The other thing too, there are some state regulatory, utility regulation issues that if we had installed these kind of off of our property, that would have added a layer of, many layers of complexity that probably would have rendered this dead on arrival a long time ago. So we do realize that, you know, in a perfect world, we would have liked to have a little bit more control over where we could site these to be even a little bit more advantageous. The other thing too is even within our own site, we have to be careful to not impede the day-to-day business of our construction and operation crews, who obviously their job and the number one priority is to keep the lights on, you know, as they are now. With that being said, kind of the benefit with these small turbines is they're actually designed to be built in urban areas. Some of them are mounted on the sides of buildings, on the tops of buildings, you know, right along sidewalks out front. So they're designed to kind of be in the close quarters areas. And many of these also have very moderate, what are called cut-in speeds, which is the speed the wind has to blow before it starts generating electricity. And these have a much lower threshold than, for example, some taller ones that you may see around there. The other thing too, with the vertical axis that spin like this, it's a lot easier to pick up a small amount of wind because it's totally irrelevant which way the turbine's pointing. Whereas the horizontal axis, you know, you need them to be able to either orient them the right way to begin with, or you need to have them to be able to rotate, you know, to kind of catch the wind in the right area. So it's not perfect, but we still think there's some value here as well.
Well, frankly, I'm curious to know if it works back there, so.
Yeah, I think it's probably going to answer some questions for people in the wooded areas and because, again, we've sort of been told it's got to be above the tree level. So that, you know, it may help some answers, you know?
Absolutely.
Any other questions?
I have one of Michael.
Uh,
Go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry. I just wanted to make one more quick point about the kiosk as well, is that, you know, and we certainly would be willing to our plan was to essentially donate a couple of computers that, of course, will have access to be able to view this, you know, kind of all this output data. And, you know, we certainly would be happy to redirect that to an area which, you know, maybe a better location than elementary school. But the other thing I wanted to point out is this information we're also going to make available just via an internet website. So if someone out Los Angeles, California has some inkling and they want to look at it, well, they certainly can. So we just, even for the schools where we do not necessarily put a computer in to look at this, they would still have the opportunity to view this type of information from the confines of their classrooms.
I do have one more question, and that has to do with other permitting requirements. You have, I recently saw a map that had to do with wildlife, and particularly it had a big red area in eastern North Carolina for this type of wind energy project and its effect on migratory waterfowl.
Mm-hmm.
Is that something that's going to apply to this, or is it just for like large wind farms or?
Without seeing the exact documentation you're referring to, my gut is that it's probably referring to the larger wind turbines, because as you may remember, there have been a couple of proposals to build some very large wind farms, like out in Perquimans County and Pasquotank, and there was some initial interest, I think, in Duke Energy putting some large-scale wind turbines in Pamlico Sound. That being said, though, our environmental team has already performed an assessment of the area, looking at issues like wildlife, and also taking a look at any potential kind of soil or water issues. And from the perspective of wildlife, they have not found anything, and their report is yet to be final, so I'll add that caveat. But as of right now, we are not aware of any particular type of wildlife that would be threatened by something of this size.
I have a question. Is this a taxpayer subsidized experiment or a Dominion subsidized experiment?
There is the potential eligibility for state and federal tax credits, but the rest of it would be through Dominion. And truthfully, in all disclosure, I mean, obviously Dominion, the projects that Dominion works on, are collected through rates, through ratepayer, costs. So, I think at this point, it would be safe to say that Dominion is not does not have any plans to pull any kind of money out of a separate fund or account and fund this project. I mean, this would be the law that this project is reliant on would essentially accomplish this cost recovery through a North Carolina Utilities Commission proceeding. The North Carolina Utilities Commission will have the final say in whether or not we do get cost recovery. We can certainly apply for it and make a case for it. It would be, if this were to proceed, it would be recovered through the North Carolina Renewable Energy Portfolio Standard Rider, which is something that's it's already in existence today, because Dominion has to comply with North Carolina's renewable energy mandate. So the costs that Dominion has to incur to comply with that are essentially kind of captured and tracked and will ultimately be recovered through that. So this would be a part of that. Again, the North Carolina Utilities Commission has the final say over whether or not these costs are deemed to be reasonable and prudent. At that point, there would be the opportunity for participation from anyone in the public who wanted to either support or not support the application for costs to be recovered.
All right, thank you. I don't have any other questions.
I got a question on Michael. The statement you made prior to introducing this fine gentleman here concerning the utility, the legislator, what was that all about? I might be the only dummy in here, but I am completely oblivious to what you're talking about.
No, sir. What I'd like to clarify is the current makeup of the North Carolina General Assembly in the House, the Senate, and the Governor's office feel that the Senate Bill 3 was a mistake. and that they are trying to repeal it either a piece at a time or in whole or in part. In deference to those that are in a position of power, we're making a case from the electric industry that we have the second largest state of manufacture and installation of renewable energy devices in the United States of America. So there are jobs involved there. You have a lot of the hog farmers that have invested millions of dollars in recovery of methane gas from the hog farms and turn that into electricity and reduce their electric bill. You have the same thing with the poultry farmers and then wood waste and other areas as well. It's hard to say, Commissioner Bateman, at this time, the possibility exists of the repeal of Senate Bill 3, but the probability, it'd be hard to say what that probability is. It was adopted in a time when the Democrats were in control, but there were a lot of Republicans that voted for it at that time. Does that pretty much answer your question?
Yes, sir. Thanks for sharing.
Yes, sir. Glad to do it. Anything else from the council?
Not for me.
Might just clarify, I don't know if this helps, but this project that we're proposing here, this is being proposed in reliance on a part of that Senate Bill 3 that Michael just mentioned. So when he was talking about the potential that it may be repealed, if it were repealed, it would essentially remove our ability to do this project.
That was the clarity I was trying to find.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Hall, were you going to speak as well, or have they covered yours?
Only if there's any other technical questions that can be addressed.
Anybody sign up?
Did you have any questions? Anybody have questions, Mr. Hall might ask?
How about the public? Anybody in the
Well,
public?
that's what I was going, did anyone sign up to speak?
No, sir,
All right. Does anyone in the audience want to speak on this conditional use application? Don't see anyone.
Okay. No more questions? We go back into regular session?
You can go back into regular session. If you do that now, you will not be able to ask them any further questions. So if you want to just
Good.
begin your discussions, so if something comes up, you can ask.
We can't, then we can't do that, yeah.
That's right. So
Nobody has any more questions?
I have a question, but before we close it, just because I'm not sure where it should go, but we're basically, the planning board recommended 7 conditions to this application, am I correct? And we're saying that the 7th one was the one that we had some concern about, or you had some concern about it?
Well, I have concern about what it says about how you would enforce it.
Okay. I guess my question is sort of, could we just eliminate that 7th one? Because it sounds to me like there's no real buffer problem. I mean, there apparently isn't going to be any problem with the solar panels that I can see. But-
And I agree with
I
that.
agree with that, too.
Okay, well, then we can proceed however.
All right, motion to close public hearing.
I'll second that.
Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Do we have any discussion among us, or do we have a motion?
No, I don't. I'm ready to do this.
Okay, let's do it.
Before we do that, though, do I need to state in the motion that we're eliminating that 7th?
Yes,
You can include that in your motion if you're
Accept them all
eliminating that.
except the 7th,
yes.
correct?
Let's see.
It's where it says-
All right, I move to grant approval of this conditional use permit application to establish 4 wind turbines as part of an electric public utility research project on the Dominion, North Carolina Power property at 5300 The Woods Road, subject to the standards and conditions for wind turbines in the zoning ordinance and other conditions recommended by the planning board with the exception of recommendation number 7, which is being omitted. Town council concurs with the conditional use findings in the staff report and find that approval of this conditional use permit is consistent with the town's adopted CAMA land use plan. The council also finds that granting approval is in the public interest. by providing a model wind turbine project, evaluating the effectiveness of different types of wind turbines, and educating the public about options for alternative energy.
Second.
Okay, any more discussions? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Next is new business, and amendment to the town code, section 20-53, 20-54, 20-55, 20-56. Who's gonna,
Mr. Mayor, some time ago, I was asked to present the amended ordinances council for approval in order to make our ordinance in line with the state statutes. Our former police chief requested amendments to section 2053, stopping on public highways prohibited, warning signals, removal of vehicles from public highways, section 20-54, parallel parking, section 20-55, handicap parking, section 20-56, parking in front of private driveways, fire hydrants, fire stations, intersection of curb lines, or fire lane. Just briefly, section 20-53 has a paragraph C added to cover parking on bike paths and reduces the fine to $20. Section 20-54 has the fine reduced from $50 to $20. Section 20-55 has the fine reduced from $250 to $20. And Section 20-56 prohibits parking in front of a driveway, a fire hydrant, entrance to a fire station, and in an intersection. It also prohibits parking in a fire lane. The additions were underlined, and the text to be removed was stricken. Are there any questions on the proposed amendment?
any questions?
I move the approval of the town code amendments to section 20, TAC 53, section 20, TAC 54, and section 20, TAC 55, and the addition of section 20, TAC 56. I further authorize the mayor to sign said amendment and addition, and the town clerk to sign said document.
Second.
Okay, any more discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Next is 8B, extension of audit services with Dowdy and Osborne.
We have a proposal from our auditor of services with Dowdy and Osborne. The town's early commitment will help auditors in planning our audit schedule for the next 3 years, and this will also help the town in budgeting our audit services. So this would allow us to continue with the audit services of Dowdy and Osborne for a 3-year period, and we have a fixed price that's been given to us for that purpose. So we've been asked to bring this in under new business.
I think it's very wise to try to do that.
I have a couple of questions for the attorney. This was on the consent agenda, but I asked that it be removed for a couple of questions. Now, let's be clear, this is a good deal, and I want it to go forward, but I want to make sure we're legal in doing it. And the only reason I'm doing this is because I'm also on the Tourist Bureau, and we just went through this deal. And I should tell the public, getting a CPA that does government audits is difficult. They don't want to do it because they have to continue into education, all kinds of certifications. There's a lot of reasons they just don't want to do that. It's not profitable to them. So this is a good deal. She is local, this company is local, and we can talk to them. And one of the things we found in the Tourist Bureau is when they went out for requests for qualifications, we found that people out of town would bid on it at a very high price, but they also weren't available to help the finance office when we needed it. Or if they did, they got in their car and charged a high price, et cetera. So, Mr. Attorney, first question. A new contract, does this commit a new council to the 3-year contract?
Yes, this would.
Okay, so we have to consider that carefully. Are we pushing a limit on using the same auditor because we've used this one now for several years. Having said that, I will give the caveat that we just changed finance officers, so any cozy relation that would be of concern, I hope, would not be a concern here.
There are no specific rules, or there's nothing in the statutes that says you cannot continue to use the same auditor. There are no guidelines that say you cannot use the same auditor. As a matter of fact, Kill Devil Hills is going through the same process, and I actually had them call the local government commission to see if they had any guidelines or specifics they could offer to us, and they did not. And they recognized the difficulty of getting people to do government contracts, and the very things that auditing, the very things that you've talked about. And so they do not say that you cannot do this. Prudent financial planning might say you need to make a change at some point in time. As a matter of fact, when I was an officer with the state bar, we wanted to use the same accounting firm we've been using for years, and they said, well, why don't you use a different partner in the firm? So we switched to partners in the firm, but continued to use the same firm.
Plus, here we have a new finance officer, so
You have
any
somebody
link
new
would
in
be
the
gone.
mix here, which gives you that comfort level that
Good.
you don't have those relationships. So,
I have one other question, and that has to do with the bidding, and is it okay to do it in this manner?
as a matter of fact, you're not seeing RFPs go out a lot anymore because exactly what Gary has
Yeah.
described happens. They'll want to be paid per diems and travel and everything to come
Right.
here, and you'll end up with a contract that's $5,000, $6,000, $8,000 more than what you would get locally.
Oh, actually, it's more than that. Okay.
So everything is kosher doing it this way?
Yeah. I just wanted to make sure that was on the record.
And all the local ones quit that we'd used.
Yeah.
Option was, and to be able to secure the thing, I think is great.
Yeah.
You want to make a motion?
Yeah. I move that Dowdy and Osborne CPAs shall be issued a letter of understanding and an agreement to maintain audit services for the fiscal years ending 2014, 2015, and 2016, based on staffing and audit level requirements remaining the same during this period. The cost for each year is $16,250. Or further authorize the finance officer to sign said agreement.
Second.
Okay, any more questions? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Next is 8C, agreement with Albemarle and Associates.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, we've obtained a proposed agreement from Albemarle Associates to evaluate the possibility of constructing outfalls at various locations on NTC 12 to alleviate the flooding during a major storm event. Basically, the analysis would do the following. It would utilize existing data obtained from the 2012 Stormwater Management Study, determine which areas may be interconnected to gravity ocean outfalls. The analysis would utilize existing survey data, the LIDAR topographic data, previously calculated management volumes, and historic data. The analysis would be conceptual in nature, but will include outfall construction estimates and other factors that may affect the system. Albemarle Associates will prepare a written summary to the findings, which will include a schematic plan. Albemarle Associates is proposing to make the analysis for the ocean outfalls for a lump sum price of $6,450. And the funds are available in Powell bill account for FY 2013 to pay for this work. So, any questions?
I have one question, and it has to do with the meeting that we had with the environmental director that came down and spoke to us, with the CAMA regional director. And that question is, the impression that I got from that meeting was that we would have a good chance of getting an ocean outfall if we extended the outfall farther out into the ocean. And my question is there anything that in this that makes it a specific task to get the costs and everything else associated with that extension? Because my impression was that's a lot more expensive than the ocean outfalls that currently have an outfall on the beach.
Okay, this is not intended to go there yet.
Okay.
This is intended to use the data we currently have from the stormwater study that was done with the pumping station. And what the intent here is to say, all right, is it possible to put an outfall here? How many? Can they be interconnected? A conceptual
Okay.
overview.
So
We're
where
not
it does
looking,
charges.
and maybe a generalized cost of how many and what. Going out to sea was it was put to us as, this is probably the right way to do it because Myrtle Beach is getting ready to do it, New Jersey's getting ready to do it. It gets you away from the swimming advisory concerns and those sort of things. And if you're going to go here, you should consider that. It wasn't an absolute, you gotta have it. So this is not what we're trying to do here. We're trying to see, is it feasible? Where would they go? How many? And whether they could interconnect. Then you got a whole nother place to go after that.
Okay, well, it was the cost data that, being in here, that made me think we probably should do something about that, because I think not only the permitting agencies, but I believe that there would be some pushback from the citizens if outfalls were to actually,
Well, you're not
be on the
even
beach.
close to an
Okay.
outfall.
All right,
You-
that's fine, and I'm fine with
But
this.
the ones that were close would have to be shut off. The ones that were way out offshore probably could be left open.
Left
That's
open,
my
that's the
understanding.
difference.
But I understand there is some information available and cost available from people who have already done.
Yes, and
So-
that's what he will get
And
that.
he will be able to come up with that.
With that.
That's what I understood.
Okay, so,
Without
not
doing any
from the,
studying, but he'll be able to obtain that information.
just to get the cost figures on that. Yeah, that was all I was.
And for the benefit of folks that are listening here, and we're talking outfalls, we're going to be looking at beach nourishment for storm damage. This is all lumped in the storm damage reduction. And even if we could somehow miraculously come up with $40 million and pump sand on the beach, you still got rain, you're still in a hole, you still need outfalls to take care of other events. So this is one part of several parts. All right.
I make a motion. Unless somebody else wants to say anything else? Anybody? I move approval of the proposed agreement from Albemarle Associates for the conceptual analysis and locating the construction ocean outfalls on NC 12 in the study areas 1 through 7 and 9 as developed in the stormwater management plan for the lump sum price of $6,450. Said funds to come from the Power Bill Fund account. I further authorize the town manager to sign the agreement for professional services provided for this conceptual analysis.
Second.
Okay. Any more discussion?
Yeah, I do want to add one other thing. When we were at that meeting, how are we allowed to do this? The state is allowed to do a lot of the kind of things that we see, beach nourishment or whatever, to repair state roads. And what they've determined is that municipalities who own roads have the same right to keep those roads open for emergency and pedestrian traffic and whatever else. So it's kind of a one-sentence caveat, but it works, and it allows us to do something that heretofore has kind of been shut off from us. So I just thought I'd add that.
The same as drainage and for roads.
Same thing,
Yeah.
same thing. You're keeping the roads open so you can access them for emergency or whatever. We have the same right as the state employs. All right.
Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Next is agreement with Coastal Planning and Engineering. This agreement is for beach management conceptual assessment.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, as a result of being informed by Dare County that funds are available to pay for engineering for storm damage reduction, or some people call beach nourishment. We have talked with Coastal Planning and Engineering about providing us with a conceptual assessment for making planning decisions on how best to manage ocean shoreline erosion and storm damage vulnerability. So we have received a proposal from them, and it basically will do as follows. We'll use existing data. The reports conduct an assessment of feasible conceptual alternatives could be pursued to mitigate oceanfront erosion and storm damage vulnerability. We'll coordinate with permitting and resource agencies to verify the feasibility of concept alternatives with regards to securing environmental clearances and permits. We'll prepare a letter report with a description of each concept alternative, a cost estimate for permitting and design of the alternative, a schedule to take the project to construction, and an estimate of construction costs. The study would also submit a draft report within 60 days contingent on timely participation of the agencies in a meeting, and then would submit a final report within 15 days of receiving comments from the town on their draft, and then would also submit the findings at a council meeting. Coastal Planning and Engineering has proposed to conduct the concept study for a lump sum price of $22,455, and the funding for the study will come from Dare County. The services agreement for the scope of professional services were reviewed by Steve Michael, and he suggested some changes in the agreement. I had submitted the changes to the Coastal Planning and Engineering, but their internal legal personnel were not able to give an answer to me on the changes in time for this meeting. Therefore, I'm recommending that the services agreement be approved contingent on modifications as recommended by the town attorney. So we have, like I said, we had not received that information, that wording for the agreement back yet, but I know that council wants to try to move ahead with this and get things moving, and so therefore I brought it before council this evening.
Okay, we got the revised plan, Emily, you asked that we all get a copy of that. And
Yeah,
there's some,
it's a significant revision, but as long as it's in the motion, that this is the one.
That's
The only
one
thing
we
that's
would
going to
prefer to
change is
take.
the price, which this one says 88,000 some odd dollars.
Well, no, you,
Yeah,
don't
yeah.
that's the price.
Yeah.
This is the
wording.
contract, same contract that I revised for Kill Devil
Yes.
Hills last year.
Yes, and so they already accepted this
They've already
contract
accepted
from
this
Kill
for
Devil
Kill Devil
Hills, so we don't anticipate any problem
I would
with
hope
this.
not.
Right. Okay, well, I'm
well,
ready to make a
what do you mean,
motion
don't
if
look at the
anybody else
price?
does.
I mean,
No, what you're looking at is actually a copy of the Kill Devil Hills
Yeah.
revised
Yeah.
contract.
okay.
You're getting a
Well,
better deal.
Well, I'm ready to make this motion that has that $22,000 price in it. Unless there's other discussion.
No, go ahead, I'll second it, and then I have a comment for the public.
Okay. I move for the approval of the scope of professional services as proposed by Coastal Planning and Engineering for the purpose of providing a study on beach management concept assessment as described in the proposal dated April 26, 2013, for a lump sum amount of $22,454. I further move that the services agreement for said scope of professional services be approved contingent on the modifications to said agreement and approved by the town attorney. Further authorize the town manager to sign the revised agreement.
Second, and a couple of comments for the benefit of the public. North of Historic Street, any beach nourishment project would require easements be signed by oceanfront property owners, so please be aware of that. Without that, nothing would happen in the eventuality that we were to find money and the rest of it found its way to fruition. Secondly, I would like for you to know that the Board of Commissioners, the County Board of Commissioners, has gone a long ways to making sense of that occupancy tax for beach nourishment money by allocating it in places and in ways that make more sense than it has been in the past, and it allows us to at least take this first step. We would not be able to do it otherwise. There's just no money to do it. So if you want to thank somebody for at least giving us the funds to do this, that's the proper place to do it. I was really glad to see them ease up on that a little bit. We got a long way to go, and you're going to have to ping on them some more, because there's a lot of money going to have to be made somewhere, but this is a start, and that's where we'll go with it. Thank you.
Okay, anybody else? All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. And next, a budget amendment, 8E, fiscal year 12-13 budget amendment number 4, establishing storm damage reduction in the amount of $22,454.
Mr. Mayor, in order for us to proceed with the agreement, Coastal Planning and Engineering, we need to adopt a budget amendment which establishes a storm damage reduction project fund, increasing the overall budget by $22,454 for the current budget year. Funds would be used, of course, by the town with our agreement with Coastal Planning Engineering to conduct the beach management concept assessment, making planning decisions on how best to manage the ocean shoreline erosion and storm damage vulnerability. As we mentioned before, the Dare County Board of Commissioners approved funding of up to $250,000 at their April 15th, 2013 Board of Commissioners meeting for beach nourishment projects. The funding appropriation will be utilized during the fiscal year and the upcoming fiscal year FY 2013-14. And the approval of this amendment will appropriate the additional funds to this year's budget.
I move.
I definitely have a comment on this one, and that is this parenthetical beach nourishment in the title of the fund. It's included in the recommended motion. I think we should just call it the Storm Damage Reduction Project Fund without the, in parentheses, beach nourishment. Because from my understanding, my understanding is that it can be used for other things.
Yeah, it
You
can
know-
be used for other things. So make the motion the way you want it.
Well, I think Irvin
You're
had a
fine. Go
comment
ahead.
as well.
You can do it.
Well, I'll make the motion. I move that this budget amendment number 4 for storm damage reduction project fund be approved.
Second, and it's just a bookkeeping type.
Yeah, that's all
Evolution
it
anyway.
is, but it can be used for other things.
Okay, who seconded?
Not for,
I did.
You did? Any more comments? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Next is multi-service district map and storm damage reduction.
Wanted to show the map right over here. Good. Council had requested that the staff to develop a municipal service district map that could possibly be used to create a district for obtaining additional revenue through a special tax. The possible map was submitted to the council in April for review, and the proposed map designates two districts. I don't know if you can see that on there, District A and District B. Basically, District A is, rather than going through all the zoning designations, basically includes the beach and between the highways. And then we have the proposed District B, which was west of the District A and bounded by the red line. I also want to indicate that District A would also include not only residential but also commercial properties located between west of 158 and just south of 158. You see the section up here where we have commercial businesses, also proposing that that be included in the District A. The reasoning behind the District A was basically, of course, because of it encompasses the oceanfront properties and properties between the highways, and then, like I mentioned, the commercial properties just south and west of 158. District B, we proposed that because that includes residential areas that feel close enough to the beach to benefit from the beach itself. So that's why we were including that. Now, the different scenarios can be extracted from this map. As we see here, you can combine the two districts. You could leave the district out, or you could expand it to increase the size of the districts if you wish to do so. Perhaps if I go through some of the steps that we have to go through to adopt the municipal service district, I'd like to do that. We have to first consider the districts for the map, and then council would direct the staff to determine the valuation of the properties in the proposed districts. And then the staff would prepare a report to council on the valuation of the property, and then staff would verify the purpose of the districts that would satisfy the state statute 160A-536. And then staff would provide a plan to provide service for the districts that will provide beach erosion control and or flood protection. Then the council would set a date for a public hearing to define the service district. And then a notice would be published that includes the date of the public hearing, location, and time, along with a copy of the district map. An advertisement for the public hearing and the map will be mailed to all property owners 4 weeks prior to public hearing. And once the council holds a public hearing, a proposed service district tax revealed. And then council would adopt a resolution defining the municipal service district. And then a resolution shall take effect at the beginning of the fiscal year after its passage. So the resolution cannot take effect during the fiscal year, but at the beginning of a fiscal year. And then any tax on the municipal service district can be applied after the approval of the district, which shall commence only at the beginning of the fiscal year, once that's determined. I know there's a lot of questions.
Oh, yeah.
Go ahead.
I don't know what the dotted lines mean. You got dotted lines,
And
then you've got two of them. One that looks like it's going, well, I thought maybe around the golf course, but that's in front of it. I don't know what that is. And then the other one that's in that little triangle area, north of the other dotted line.
Yeah, I think a lot of this, I believe, is not residential right now. I believe that's reserve. Is that right, Joe? That's reserve area.
Majority of it.
Yeah, the majority of that is a reserve, so, you know, we didn't know whether that should be included or not. So that's the reason for that, the dashed red line there.
And the little triangular area there and, between district, where is it? See that little, yeah,
Yes,
that
that,
area.
that little
Yeah.
triangle there. I guess it's
That's Seascape.
questionable whether or not.
Seascape condo is what it is.
That should be, you know, in the District B or District A.
See, I don't get what you say when you say affected by the beach. The whole town is affected by the beach.
Amen. I
Well,
agree.
proximity-wise, they're closer to the beach, I guess is what we're trying to say.
So what you're saying is their property values are enhanced in that area that's, you show west of the highway. But, so for instance, it's the high dune area where they can see the ocean or, see, I just don't get that. And the other part of it is, if you have flood damage prevention measures, and this is the kind of area that we set up, then there is absolutely nothing that will ever be done from that fund to help in a, for instance, Hurricane Irene type scenario where the sound side is flooded. We would never be able to use that money for anything affecting sound side flooding. Is that correct?
That's my understanding, and.
It all would have to come from the ocean.
I think when you put the tax on the district, you have to say what it's for,
Mhm.
and it has to be used, I don't know what the attorney's,
It has to be used for that project.
that project.
For that
Can't be
project.
used for other projects, it can't go into the general.
Okay, so maybe we should not call it flood damage prevention project, we should call it beach nourishment project.
Well, the statute
Get it that-
authorizes the town to set out certain purposes the funds can be used for. Beach erosion control and flood and hurricane protection works and drainage projects are all things that can be.
See, I guess what I'm getting at is if hurricane protection is in there, and this is and these are the people that are paying the taxes, then don't do anything for the rest of the town. So if there's any sound side flooding caused by a hurricane, we would not be able to
No.
use that
No.
money
No.
because nobody's putting into the fund.
Right.
So that is correct.
If it's a special tax district set up for a specific purpose, then it's used in that district and nowhere else.
Mhm.
And that's just the bottom line.
Well, the other part of it is, a lot of the area that is in this district is, and you know what, I live on the beach, I live between the highways. I have no problem at all with me being in the special tax district. But a lot of what I see there is like high dune area, and I just kind of wonder, those people have not suffered any kind of flooding. How do they wind up in here? That's the,
Well, that's what we're discussing.
yeah.
The question that the manager's put before us is that what we want the map to look like, if we want to map it all, or do we want some other iteration of the map? So right now, what he's proposing, he's got down the hill folks east of 158 in a special tax district. He's got up the hill folks in another tax district to do the same, but at perhaps a lower rate. And then the over the hill folks, back where Clifton lives, are not in this, not involved in this at all. I mean, that's all there is to it. So, what do we want? That's what we're being asked.
Well,
Are we gonna keep it east of 158 and not do anything to the up the hill folks as far as taxing them? Is it all gonna be in that small district, between the highways or not? That's what we're being asked to do.
Well, if we're gonna have a special tax district, I can sort of understand the commercial properties being involved, because we have had flooding on 158. Certainly, the commercial areas on the west side of the highway have been affected when people, can't can't get out of their houses to get to their businesses, that kind of thing. But when we start going way up high and, you know, on part of that map, and it's for, I guess, it's that definition that says properties that are affected by the beach, they're more affected by the beach than I don't know, I just don't get that.
Well, I sort of visualize 158 to the east as being the areas that we're really concerned about protecting and trying to do something for.
Yeah.
However, you got Rabbit Hollow area, which is sort of probably gonna be lumped into that some way. The businesses, I can see, I don't know, that was my thinking when we started. It was the area that was greatly, you know, it was
I guess
really
I'm a little confused because I thought that the idea here was to establish districts that would benefit from essentially basically preserving or protecting the beach. It didn't necessarily mean that if you were on the high dunes that you didn't, you would participate in preserving the beach because you benefit from it. I mean, technically we all benefit from it. I won't, you know, necessarily say that's not the case. But the closer you are to the beach, you benefit at maybe not at the same rate in which the beachfront people do. But it doesn't necessarily mean that if something happens that the high dunes people, you know, are going to be damaged. I mean, because they obviously won't be damaged as much as the others, but still the protection is there to preserve the beach. That's the whole concept. It's not, to my way of thinking, it's not a concept of, you know, I'm going to pay this extra tax, but then when the storm comes, somebody's going to come along and help me. I mean, because it isn't, it's more of, you know, it's the public interest of preserving the beach. And how do we share in that? And the people closest to it share the most, and the people next stage fare a little bit less and a little bit less as you get away from the beach. But it doesn't have anything, this wouldn't have any effect of, you know, sound side flooding, because there wouldn't be any projects for sound side flooding. I mean, you know, we're talking about doing something on the beach to preserve the beach, which is our major tourist attraction. I mean, that's our whole business here.
Okay,
But the sound side, I mean,
so
what are you gonna do?
nobody benefits from the beach west of that red line?
no, I'm saying everybody's benefits, but they benefit in a
Yeah.
different scale, is what I'm saying, and I thought that was the idea. And I thought that's what Nags Head did, was do it on the same basis, that the beachfront benefits the most, so therefore they should pay more. But
Oh,
as you move back, it may be a little bit less and a little bit less, but I live in Kitty Hawk Landing, but that doesn't mean I don't go to the beach, and I benefit from the beach, I benefit from the beach accesses. You know, all my guests go to the beach. I mean, we all benefit. We wouldn't, most of us wouldn't live here if we didn't have the beach. I mean, that's the truth of it. So this is just a graduated way of looking at how to somehow preserve the beach. And that, to me, is what the simple thing. Now, the details of how we work out that later, you know, is it going to be used for outfalls, or is it going to be used for building a dune, or is it going to, you know, that can come later. This is just a map to say, this is how people will theoretically benefit or should pay to do these kinds of projects.
And it's trying to get something in place, so in the future, it'll be in place when we need to do something to
Right.
raise the funds. It's
And
gonna
that
take,
all
it's
comes later.
gonna take
I mean,
the rest another year to get this in place.
Yes, that's correct.
And if you wait another year to put it in place, then you got another year before you can have a tax district. So that's why we're looking ahead now instead of some other time, where the line should be. You know, Richard's got a point that you know, maybe at some point you have a minimal tax thing for the whole town, but those in the oceanfront certainly benefit greater, and the ones between the highway benefit greater than somebody back. So that's why I think graduated this thing.
I'm with Richard, and this is what my whole thing, I've always thought, everybody, the businesses, the crabbers back in Kitty Hawk Landing, everybody benefits from the beach and from our tourists down here. So we all need to share in it. If you had a district that was on the ocean front, that's one level. The second level between the highways. The third level from 158 west to the sound. And everybody's taxed, and the taxes gradually goes down from that, like it is in Nags Head.
Yep.
The house I have in Nags Head Cove is taxed different than the houses on the ocean front. It's plain and simple.
Yeah,
Because the ocean front's gonna benefit more, they pay more tax. The thing is, that it's gonna take a lot of money to do what we're proposing to do. So this is only just one little teeny tiny piece of the puzzle. It's gonna take a lot of funds.
Well, I absolutely agree with that, and I agree with what Nags Head did, and I agree that people that are close to the beach should pay more. But what I don't see here is that there is any contribution from the rest of the town. You know, everybody, as you say, benefits from the beach. In Nags Head, when they did their project and have a special fund, I think there was a penny or two on the town-wide rate.
Town-wide, I think.
That
Very minimum, but.
it was minimum, but it
Yeah.
was something. And
And that
as
don't
someone who
stop.
lives on the beach, I would like to point out to those who don't live near the beach that there was always the clarion call that the beach is for everybody. And I am in total agreement with that. And whenever there are some maybe not so great things getting put into the neighborhood, you know, and the people on the beach sometimes have to put up with a lot of behavior that maybe isn't exactly respectful of their property. We're always reminded that the beach is for everybody, yet when we're establishing these districts, there's just no indication that there's even a minimal amount being.
Okay, just stop just a minute. The manager's asking for instruction from us. If you don't like this, tell him what you want. And then if everybody agrees with it, he'll do it. All this discussion is moot. What do you want? If you want the whole town to share in it, tell him how you want it graduated, and they'll go do it.
I just told him.
But you don't have to make a special district in the whole town to tax the rest of the town.
If you want it for this project, you do.
No, you don't. No, you don't.
You can just take.
My
you can take
understanding-
2 cents.
We can raise 2
Can't we,
cent
in the
tax.
budgeting process, say that this project, we're gonna spend this amount of money for a walkover?
The municipal service districts are exactly to create the graduated taxing ability. That's what they're for.
But-
If you're not gonna do that, then you just do it through your general tax power of the entire town. You just raise your taxes to whatever level,
So-
and everybody pays the same rate.
Okay, just for my argument, say we're gonna do 2 cent for everybody in the town. But in District 3, we're gonna do 5 cent. In District, whatever it is, we're gonna do, it doesn't have to be in a district in order to do town-wide and then add extra into these other districts.
The town-wide tax is gonna apply to everybody. The extra tax in the
That's
districts
right.
applies only
That's
in
right.
that district.
Okay,
That's
now,
right.
now let me just answer this question. In the town-wide tax, can you say that that town-wide tax, you gave an example of 2 cents, that the town-wide tax is for this purpose?
In the budget.
Yeah.
You put
In
it
the
in the
budget,
budget.
in the budget.
That's right.
Process.
So all you would have to do is, at budget time, say 2 cents worth of the town's
Go into this.
This-
Go
will
into
go
this
into
project.
this
That's right,
project.
that's town-wide.
And you don't have to say that it's
A special
a
district.
special district,
That's right.
because everybody's paying it in
That's
all of
correct.
the districts.
That's
This is
correct.
just for the
This
people
is-
that
this
are
is for
paying
ex-
extra.
Extra, that's
Okay.
correct.
All right.
If I'm wrong, but I think I'm right.
Then I'm all right with this.
Isn't that right, Mr.
But
Attorney?
but a future council can come in and say, that money's in the general fund.
That's right.
We're not gonna put it out there on that beach.
That's right.
As opposed to a district set up,
Right.
which dedicates it to that project. And that's what you need to keep in the back of your mind when you're talking general
Right.
revenue.
But if you do a 2-cent tax and you say it's gonna be that and put it in the budget in a special fund,
We can always change it.
You could change that.
That
Anything that
change.
goes into the general fund is subject to change. Like, you know, you say we're putting $100,000 a year, decide to buy a fire truck.
right.
And you decide, no, we need something else more. The fire truck gets taken off and the money.
That's a good
goes to
idea,
the
let's do
general.
that.
Yeah,
I didn't
okay.
mean to scare you.
So what you're saying is this: if you don't put another line in here for the rest of the town and say that this money is specifically for this project, but so every year you can designate a certain amount of the taxes to go into this fund. Once you put it there, if it had come from the general fund as a transfer, which is what we would have to do when we do the budget, once you put it there, can you take it out the way we can from any other fund?
Yeah.
So, but what I understand is if you're in the special tax district,
That
you
money
can't take that money out.
Right.
So how do you distinguish? You have to keep track of how much you put in there from
What
every year?
happens with most of these projects, or some of them, is you don't generate enough funds through the special tax districts.
Mm-hmm.
You generate funds that get it going and supply a lot of the money, but sometimes the towns have to go borrow money, and then you're obligating town finances to pay that money back.
Mm-hmm.
I think Nags Head had to borrow money, and so they have obligated, you know, the general revenues of the town to a certain extent to pay that money back. So that money is dedicated in that sense, and that it's dedicated to go pay that money they borrowed back until it's paid back.
For the whole time.
Yeah.
Yeah. So all we're gonna do is, we can assure the people who live in the areas that are in this special district that the extra money that they are paying towards their property taxes will never be used for anything else except the purpose of that fund.
That's correct.
If we do something when we're in the budget process and put extra money in there, then we just have to keep track
But
of what it is, or have a separate fund that is for this same purpose, but is one that the money can be moved back into the general fund if
That could be.
necessary.
You
Just
know-
so the accounting is straight.
but all, establishing the districts and then establishing the rate, the tax
That's
rate or
two different
whatever, has to be done through a public hearing process. And if I understand it correctly, that basically you could establish these districts, you could tax for a given period of time, say, and then you define the projects you want it for. In other words, what it encompasses.
Well, no, you have to define the project.
Right, before, to the public, and the public would come and say yea or nay, right? And then,
Well, you got to set up the districts first. and-
Right.
And you have to have a plan. The plan is beach renourishment and stormwater drainage, or whatever you want to call it.
Storm damage reduction.
Storm damage reduction, that's what that term is.
That's written on your brain. I had to call you up, find out what it was.
But getting your districts set up to implement that plan is the first step. And you've taken a step tonight by hiring the engineers to come forward with some conceptual plan about what you might be able to do.
Yeah.
And get some idea of what it might cost. And you can set this district up and you don't have to impose any taxes. You know, the taxes can be next year.
Well, it can't be this year.
Well, you still got time. You haven't adopted, you could grant, well, you don't have time to get it before.
No, we
No,
don't have time.
no, I don't think so.
We don't have time. So it's gotta be another year and two months down the road.
Yeah.
And, you know, the money we gain from these districts or the whole time, very minimal as far as beach nourishment or outfalls. I mean, it wouldn't even commence to start to pay for it. It'll just help some engineering funds and that stuff.
Depends on how high you raise your taxes.
Well, yeah, but you can't do, not in Kitty Hawk, you can't do it. I
You
mean,
can't raise them high enough
So,
in this
all
special
right,
district.
folks, listen. Some of us want to go home tonight.
Yeah.
Do you want to give the manager some other instructions with regard to how to set up this district map, which you're obviously not happy with now, and let him come back to us with something else? And perhaps circulate it through council before we get to a council meeting, so you kind of get some sort of sense of whether you need to be standing there or not. Does that make sense?
Yes, sir.
What do you want to do?
Yeah, I didn't have any problem with the map. I just had two questions. I don't think the area, the larger dotted area should be included in District B, because as you said, if it's primarily preserved property. I don't understand why Seascape is outlined. Was there a logic to that?
The what?
Why, the Seascape is the triangular piece. It's residential, it's in District.
Yeah, I think there was a question about whether or not it should be a part of District A or District B.
I think it's fine as B,
Okay.
personally. I mean, it's residential. I had some question about what was, originally I thought, well, why did you do the frontage partially for A and partially for B? But when you said residential versus commercial, it made sense. So I have no problem with A and B excluding the larger dotted area. And then if we want to do a District C for the rest of the town, I would be perfectly happy with that too, if you want to go that way. But I don't think it's necessary.
I don't think it's necessary, but I'm with you. I'm okay with if you take out the dotted line area.
Yeah.
And the dotted line around the Seascape condos.
Well, I just, yeah, I would just include
They should be,
Seascape in
They should be
District
in
B.
B.
they-
Yeah, it seems to make sense to me.
What about the way I read this, the BC3 district, Walmart and et cetera, that is in
A.
District
A.
A
Yes.
is commercial.
I'm okay with it like that. I don't know how you can solve all the
So you
problems.
don't want to add something back
I don't
down the
see-
hill?
I do, I mean, because I think that's the.
I mean, I don't care. Like, give the
No, I
man,
would like-
give the man
this is what I'd like to
direction.
see. I would like to see the beachfront, right on the beachfront is one district, between the highways another district, from the bypass back another district. ABC.
Yeah, the only problem with that, Irvin, that I've got is I think the beachfront is only a row of lots, and most of it is not even built on, or a lot of it anymore. It probably isn't worth it to make a separate district for that. In other words, just, you know, what they've done here is included from the ocean to the bypass.
And I agree with
I-
that.
and I
I mean,
think
that's-
Yeah, I think-
That's a good point.
It seems like that would be the simplest way to do it.
I think so, because everybody's involved, over there is involved just about in that
Yeah.
whole
Well,
scenario.
if we had a larger ocean front, I mean, I would say maybe you wouldn't separate it like, you know, sections of Kill Hills, but we
have
don't.
to.
I mean,
No.
it is, that's just a little bitty strip, so
Yeah.
just put it in with the other, because it's just a lot of work.
Yeah, and the way I understand it, people that own lots that currently are not buildable would not wind up with a buildable lot just because nourishment happened. So
Right.
it would not enhance their property values
Right.
in terms of their being able to build on
Or
a
they
lot
wouldn't be
that
able,
is.
they wouldn't be able to add on
Add
what they've
on.
already got.
I think when you get into a project like, the federal project was, there was a stipulation that if they did beach nourishment, if it was unbuildable, the nourishment could not make it buildable. And I think somehow we have to say, well, that's gonna
That
have
would
to
be
be
the
the
case,
case,
yeah.
because
Yeah.
we're not in the business of providing private property suddenly the ability to build on it. I mean,
Right.
that's not our goal here.
The law wouldn't allow you to do that anyway.
Well, yeah, whatever.
So you just
I
want
have
two
a su-
districts in?
I have a suggestion. I'd like to direct the manager to take this map, make a third map, or a second map that shows back of the dune line, if you will, as a separate district. You'd have 3 districts. And anything else that any of you all come up with that you feel like you want to present to us so that we, at the next council meeting, have something that we can work with. And keep in mind, all we're doing is establishing something for the people to tell us whether they want it or not.
That's right.
It's that simple.
Yeah,
We're
exactly.
not deciding anything, so all we need, and it's become a very contentious affair, to decide what the manager needs to present to us. So bring us a couple more options, and maybe we can make a decision.
Well,
Now, we wouldn't make a
would you
final
just
decision
repeat that?
until after the public hearing and that stuff, right? In other words, we would have the option until we heard everything
Yeah, this is so you've got something to present.
to present,
the folks
right?
as a plan.
Okay.
We do have some time to do this, so that's,
We couldn't even invoke it until next fiscal year.
right, that's
This
what I'm
one's
saying,
not
we have
coming.
some
We've got,
time
yeah,
to.
we've got, it's not a
you know,
restrained
to
thing. 'cause we got-
evaluate this, continue to look at it.
We got
need
14
to.
months before we could even get it done.
That's correct. Yes, sir.
All right.
Thank you.
But we
have
want to
direction?
proceed so we can. Okay. All right, Gary, you need something to eat, I know, go
So
ahead.
3 districts.
Well, or
A,
more.
B, and C,
If
or
you've got
whatever.
something else, take it to him. Let's move on. I'm impatient.
Impatient.
If you want.
I am.
Yeah, you're impatient. You should eat before you come tonight.
Yeah.
It's not a matter of eating, it's a matter of going on.
Are we down to reports and general comments from the town manager? Is that where we are?
I hope so.
Gee, yeah.
I'm tired of hearing y'all yak.
Oh, come on.
Okay, Mr. Mayor, a few items. In regards to the Winks filing, I want to make council aware that the papers were served on April the 4th. Then I received an extension of a request on April 29th, which allows the defendant to respond, I believe, by June 3rd. So that's continuing on. We recently received a compliment from Scott M. Johnson of Crown Castle, who is replacing an antenna for Sprint on the tower here in town. Mr. Johnson wanted to compliment Donna, Joe, and Dennis from our planning department on how they walked them through the entire permitting process. It made it very easy for them. Also want to take an opportunity to recognize 2 of our employees for completing the municipal administration course at the School of Government at the University of North Carolina. Our Public Works Director, Willie Midget, and our Management Assistant, Melody Clopton, completed the 150-hour course last month, and I would like to compliment them for their accomplishment. I recently received a letter from Mr. Robert Dean of Falls Church, Virginia. Mr. Dean wanted to compliment our police department for their work and presence at the Flying Pirate Half Marathon that was held on April 13th. There's, I'm sure, a lot of concern about that type of thing nowadays. So. And then the last item is I need to talk to council about establishing some dates, some future dates. I talked to the mayor about for budget sessions for workshop. We need to set a date for workshop this month. And I have a couple dates. I know we had originally scheduled the 21st of May for a workshop on, it was on the schedule. And so we could do it either May 20th or May 21st, if that's agreeable to members of council for the workshop.
20th is better for me.
I'm sorry?
The 20th would be good.
20th, okay.
I'd prefer the 21st.
What day of the week is it?
20th is a Monday, 21st is a Tuesday.
I mean, I can do the 21st.
I'm all right with 21st.
I've kind of worked my schedule around it so far for the 21st, so just thinking that we were going to have it.
I think that what we were waiting for was some word on when the revenue picture would be clarified, and
We
if
should,
if it's still that late, then we just do it then. I think there was some question about maybe we could do it earlier if they had, if they
Yeah,
had better.
I think we were
better
talking
pictures.
about doing a workshop before we get down to making
Yeah,
decisions.
yeah, but,
I thought that's what we were.
yeah, at the last meeting, though,
We
weren't
really haven't
just-
had a workshop to go over all of the
Yeah.
items and things.
And I think that the only reason we were waiting so late was because of the revenue picture, wasn't that
Right.
correct?
Right.
Yes.
So is that still the case, that the
We should have
revenue
the,
picture,
better numbers.
won't be clear until that time?
Should have numbers at that time. Richard mentioned that he would be out the week of the 13th, so we really couldn't do it any
Okay.
earlier.
The 21st,
Okay.
if you can do it.
We should be
early.
okay with that, then we're gonna have to make some decisions at some point after that.
Make decisions? Like
Okay,
we've done
then-
tonight?
Well,
Oh, Gary.
in the past, I mean,
Okay.
I'm not for having a lot of meetings, but we haven't had any time spent on any of the preliminary preparation for it, so I think we should have some sort of workshop if,
Yeah.
hopefully have enough information on the 21st. And then where we go from there, we decide, I mean, because normally we would have the public hearing on the 3rd, that's our regular meeting. If we aren't ready for a public hearing then, we can discuss it on the 21st and then adjust, our
Go from there,
schedule
I
in
think.
June.
That's my thing.
Yeah, I was,
We're all good on the 21st.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, would we have to call for a public hearing on the 3rd in order to have it on the 3rd? Would we have to
You-
do
Yeah,
that
you
at
gotta-
this
We have to do,
meeting?
I think we have to do that at the
Because
workshop.
of the
don't we?
advertisement or whatever?
we would have to, at June the 3rd, you set the tax rate and then call for the public hearing and schedule the
Oh,
public
okay.
hearing.
That would be
Okay,
later
got
in
it.
June.
And then
Later in
we could
June.
have that, I would suggest around the 17th of June, if you want to wait and see at the workshop and think about that, but I was thinking somewhere along the 17th of June. And Richard had mentioned to me also that he would be out, I think the 24th to the 28th, so.
The last week of June, I won't be
Last
in
week of
town.
June, he will not be here, so would not allow, I guess, or you could, I guess, still have a meeting to adopt a budget, but then if you could do it that week of the 17th, then that would probably work better. So,
If we've got
you want,
all the information, public hearing, if you were here or not, we'll just have to see where we are, I think.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
fine. I just,
Okay.
but, you could do that at the June 3rd meeting and set that date if you want to. Okay? All right, then we will have the workshop on the 21st. Okay? All right, and that's all I had, Mr. Mayor.
Okay?
and that's at 9 a.m., right?
Yes, sir, 9 a.m. here, yes, sir.
I guess all you got. Reports, general comments from the town attorney.
Nothing.
Nothing, huh? Okay. Richard?
I have nothing, thank you.
Irvin?
Public Works, Police Department, Fire Department, thank you for the work on the marathon. It was a great success. Thanks to y'all. And we raised some great money for the foundations and really appreciate it. Thank you.
I just have a comment I already passed on to John, but I would like to mention it publicly, and that is that I got some really great comments from an oceanfront property owner who was involved in a big project raising his house, and he said that he had never, ever had any kind of dealing with a town planning and inspections department as good as what he experienced in Kitty Hawk.
Good. Gary? Okay, I got one item that seemed to keep service in that, and that's the no parking on East Kitty Hawk Road.
Yes.
And Joe, can we have something next meeting that would clarify what we talked about, and maybe whether we want to not have any signs from the western driveway of to the beach road or to the 158?
Gentleman was here, but he left. That was
Okay. So if we could have something, if council agrees with that, that we can change that if we so desire to do that. If we start at the western edge of the western driveway and go to the 158.
And for clarification, what we're doing is, the town code presently says no parking is allowed, but we're thinking to allow it.
And there's no signs there at the time, so we need to clarify, either remove the ordinance so it says no, allow parking, and so we'll be in conjunction with the ordinance. Can we do that?
Yes, sir. Do that.
That won't affect any traffic, there will be no traffic issues with that, we've looked at it,
Right.
and no accidents.
I know we discussed it before, but we need to make that change, I think. Okay. Next is, public comment. Anybody signed up for public comment?
No, sir.
Anybody want to make public comment? Huh? You do?
Yes.
Well, come up here and give us your name and tell us who you are.
This is real quick, I know it's a late hour. I'm Willow Kelly. I am the Government Affairs Liaison for the Outer Banks Home Builders Association and the Outer Banks Association of Realtors. I also serve as president of a 20 coastal county coalition. With regards to erosion mitigation, shoreline management, we would just like to say we commend the town of Kitty Hawk for taking this on and looking forward. Just a personal story to share. 7 years ago when I started in this position, I called the town of Kitty Hawk after the beach referendum, sales tax referendum failed, and I asked the town of Kitty Hawk what you were doing as far as looking at future oceanfront development. And I'm not sure who answered the phone, but they laughed at me. And they said oceanfront development, we're just waiting for the next house to fall in. And at that time, it was a learning curve for me in this job, and knowing that the first line of stable natural vegetation determines where you have to build back. You have to build back, your starting point is 60 feet from the first line of stable natural vegetation. 7 years ago, that line was across the beach road. And with all the erosion that has occurred since then, I'm not sure where that is, but in future discussions, you might want to look at possibly where that line exists. And if there was a rule that said houses that were in front of that line had to be taken down, you'd see what kind of tax value you'd be losing.
I know.
So,
And some of that may start on the west side of the beach road before you start the vegetation.
It is.
exactly.
In
It's
some
across the
places.
street.
Yeah.
So, and then there were setback rules that changed in 2009 with residential development, that the larger the structure, the larger the setback.
Right.
So you could have some structures that would have to go 120 feet back.
Right.
So you look at wiping out that tax base probably along the beach road on the west side. So I just wanted to mention that, and thank you very much.
Thank you for all the work you do, too.
Willow, we've already been told that everything east of 12 can't be rebuilt.
If you have a beach nourishment project, and there will be opportunities in that 2009 changes to the setback rules, there was an allowance that said if you have a beach nourishment project and you establish a static vegetation line, that on those lots that are unbuildable, if there is room meeting the setback from the static vegetation line, I think you can build up to 2,000 square feet footprint.
We're a long ways from
It
there.
might include the porch, I'm not sure. But it's small
in-
enough to where you could move it.
In Kitty Hawk, that stable line of vegetation in many places is on the west
West
side.
side.
We've
So
run
It is
into
across
that.
the beach road. It
Yes,
is on
it
the
is.
west side.
Yes,
But
it
once you
is.
have a beach nourishment project, you'll determine a static vegetation line, and then the setback will be based behind
On
that
that.
static vegetation line. So it did allow, like in Emerald Island, some other places along the coast, unbuildable lots, they could actually do something with their property. So, that's something else to keep in mind.
Anybody else?
Hello, my name is Donnie King. I have Ocean Boulevard Restaurant. I'm also forming a group called Better Beaches OBX to help get everybody's eyes on, managing our coastline in the local area. I just want to thank you, especially for taking step one. I know the county's funding, this research that we're looking at. However, you had to apply for the step and speak with them and instigate the process, so that's very important. When it comes to the municipal service districts. You know, there was considerable argument amongst yourselves as to, you know, the map that was drawn up. We may need 3 or 4 service districts, you know, it all depends on, you know, not only the amount of money you can raise and what you can do with it, but also the public's perception of where specific amounts of money are coming from. So, you know, obviously we all recognize it as a process, but one that's important and one that we appreciate. And I guess at this point, that's about all I have to say, and, you know, just thank you again.
Thanks, John.
Anybody else? Going once, twice, 3 times, you're out? Okay. Motion to recess for budget workshop for May 21st
I
at
move
9
to,
a.m.
I move to recess to the budget workshop of May 21st at 9 a.m.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?